What's going on, everyone? It's your girl Aliyah with Title Sports Network, and I'm joined now with the one and only Dan Rafael, another member on our team. How are you today, Dan?
I'm good. As they say, I just flew into Vegas, and boy, are my arms tired.
I love it. So we're back again for another great fight in Las Vegas, Gervonta Davis versus Frank Martin. What are your thoughts going into this fight week?
Well, I mean, I've liked this fight since I made it. It's a very interesting matchup to me because Tank is fighting an undefeated fighter who, in my interactions with Frank and listening to his interviews and watching sort of his body language, I get the feeling anyway that he really thinks he can win the fight. And when I've seen other Tank opponents, that has not always come across. When I've seen the way his opponents have interacted with him or spoken about it, he's got a quiet confidence. I like that. If he's not ready for a world title fight at this point, I don't know if he ever will be, so we'll see. I mean, they've been talking a lot of stuff. I mean, we saw at the press conference that we just finished up with, they definitely had their say with each other. I don't feel like Frank is backing down. And so I expect it to be a good fight. But Tank is, there's a reason why he's in the position he's in, because he's really good and he pretty much knocks everybody out. So see if he can do it again.
After we saw the Ryan Garcia fight last year, were you expecting, I guess, for Frank to be his next opponent? We haven't seen Gervonta step in the ring for 14 months, so we didn't really know what he was going to go as far as opponent.
Well, it was hard to tell because obviously once he finished the fight with Ryan Garcia, and it wasn't like it was a secret, everybody knew that once that fight was over, soon after he was going to go do his jail time, which he did. I think a lot of people expected him to be back in the earlier part of this year, but because of his situation, because of the PBC schedule, et cetera, it ended up getting pushed back until this point. So when they were talking about who his opponents might be, really was anybody's guess. It was very clear there obviously wasn't going to be a rematch with Ryan Garcia at that point. There was a sense, would he fight? Would he go up to 140 maybe and fight somebody? Would he stay at 135? Basically, it was not known. But if you look down the landscape of the fighters that PBC worked with in the lightweight division, Frank Martin was a guy that seemed like certainly a strong possibility, let's say, to get the fight, and he ended up getting the fight.
Most definitely. And what do you think about the press conference? That was very entertaining.
Well, maybe I'm just an old fart and been doing this a long time. I've been to a lot of press conferences. I didn't find it all that entertaining. That's just me. Maybe for you it was exciting and entertaining. Too much back talk, over talk. I don't mind the shit talk. It's when they talk over each other that kind of just. Again, from my perspective, I know here on Title Sports you're trying to get the good video and all that kind of stuff. For a lot of what I do is you want things you can quote in a story of what they're saying, and if they're talking over each other and you can't really get anything crystal clear, and they're not really kind of saying anything of substance and they're just calling each other names, it's extremely counterproductive. It's not helpful at all. But they obviously have, I wouldn't say an animosity towards each other, but they have they want to one-up each other. So that's why the crosstalk was going on. But like I said, they're both confident, it seems to me. Tank, we know his confidence. He's beaten all of his opponents. And like I said, Frank's got that quiet confidence about him.
What do you think about the sparring video that they both keep bringing up? Because they also brought it up at the first press conference, too. I still don't know. I don't know if you've seen anything.
I haven't seen it, but there's been numerous times, going back to sparring ever existed, that guys who spar, at some point, they may fight. And I've always been a believer that it doesn't really have much to do with the actual fight. Because they're in a sparring session, even if you're going hard with each other, the reality is you're trying to get work. Yeah. One guy, maybe both guys are preparing for a fight. So if you're in a sparring session, a lot of times you're asked to simulate the opponent, to do certain things. I don't know the circumstances specifically of when Tank and Frank were doing their sparring, but to me, it's not necessarily relevant to the fight. And part of that is because you don't know, did one guy come in off the street, he hadn't sparred for a couple of months, the other guy's in the throes of a training camp? Are both of them just out, into the ring for the first time in a while? So it's good to talk about. It makes for interesting discussion points, but in the end, I don't really think it has much to do with each other. I find the notion of the sparring situation, it has even less to do with what might happen in the real fight than the many times I've heard and written about boxers who fought in a real fight and the professionals who may have had experience fighting each other in the amateur ranks.
Mm-hmm. And what do you think Frank Martin has to do to beat world champion Gervonta Davis?
Well, first of all, he has to make sure he avoids the big punch. I mean, that's really what Tank does his damage with. One thing about Tank is, I'm not saying he's not easy to beat because he's undefeated, but I think he's easy to prepare for as long as you can execute the plan because he doesn't throw a lot of punches. So certain fighters, they may be in there throwing a ton of shots and you don't know what the heck is coming, which hands it's coming from all angles. Tank is very, you can go to school on him because his output is so limited. But the problem is he's so smart with where he places his shots. So even he may throw among the lowest amount of punches, at least according to CompuBox, as there is in boxing. You know, he throws less punches than basically everybody out there. I mean, he might be last actually in terms of their overall output, but he lands among the highest percentage. So you can go to school on him because you're not going to be worried about 12 different punches come from all angles. But you got to make sure you don't get clipped with that big punch, and that's obviously what every fight that Tank has is his objective is to get rid of you with that big shot. But he's very good at setting that big punch up.
So I saw that Timothy Bradley said that Frank Martin is going to be the most athletic person that Gervonta Davis has shared the ring with, and this fight is going to be a lot more challenging than people are anticipating. Do you agree with that? Do you think Frank is the most athletic opponent we've seen Gervonta face?
Well, as you were saying that, I was thinking of the other opponents that I would consider the quote-unquote athletic, and nothing springs to mind immediately. But look, I have tremendous respect for Tim Bradley as a boxer, as a person, and as a mind that knows about boxing. So if that's his opinion, I'm not going to strongly disagree with it. But there's a difference between being athletic and being able to take a shot. That's the big difference.
And then, of course, we also heard at the press conference Errol Spence Jr. say that Gervonta Davis hasn't fought anyone. I guess, what are your thoughts on that? And who, in your opinion, do you think has been Gervonta Davis's hardest opponent?
Well, I mean, first of all, Errol is the promoter for Frank Martin, so he's obviously sticking up for his guy. I would expect nothing less from him to come to the press conference where his man is in the biggest moment of his career to fight for the world title against one of the best fighters in boxing on a big stage in this great arena on a pay-per-view. So, of course, he's going to stand by his guy. But, you know, in terms of the best guys that Tank has fought, I mean, look, Frank, I don't know if you can say he's the best guy he's faced yet because we may say that in the future, but Frank doesn't have the kind of accomplishment that a lot of the other fighters that Tank has faced because he's never been a world champion. That's not to say he won't be or that he can't be. So, you know, you might look at other fighters, but I think if you said to me, and they're totally different kind of fighters, maybe I won't say he's the best fighter, but certainly the toughest fight that Tank ever got so far was probably against Isaac Pitbull Cruz.
Most definitely. And going back again to last year, his fight against Ryan Garcia, and then we just saw the fight with Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney. I know in the past they talked about this fight, but I don't know if it would ever happen now. If it ever did happen, what do you think the fight between Devin Haney and Gervonta Davis would look like, since we have seen them both in the ring with Ryan Garcia and what they could do?
Well, I mean, back prior to Devin Haney fighting against Ryan Garcia, you might have a different thought now, because if he was able to get knocked down 3 times against Ryan Garcia, who's an electrifying puncher with his left hook, but I don't know if he's got that same kind of pure punching power that Tank does. You'd have to look at that and say maybe Tank could do something similar to Devin Haney, but styles make fights, and just because one guy, you know, just because Ryan beat Devin in a certain manner doesn't mean that would necessarily translate if Haney was fighting against Tank Davis. I mean, obviously there'll be people that will say, well, okay, fine, Ryan knocked him down 3 times, but, you know, he maybe was using PEDs, he didn't make the weight, he was cheating, whatever you want to say. So there's totally different fights. And you know what, if Devin comes back and gets his stuff together, and, you know, that would still be a pretty big fight.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree with that. And let's talk about the other fights on this card. This is a stacked card. I'm really looking forward to all of these. Which fight on the undercard are you most excited about?
Well, I'm excited to see David Benavidez move up to light heavyweight. You know, I think Alexander Vodzik, who is his opponent, former champion, legitimate guy, only loss in his career was to Arthur Beterbiev in a unification fight. That was a very competitive fight until the time of the stoppage. Yes, he did retire for 3 years after that, but he's come back and won 3 fights in a row. And anytime a fighter moves up to a new weight class, I mean, I think David will handle that. But you have questions. How is he going to deal with the jump? Personally speaking, I've always felt like the jump from the super middleweight division to the light heavyweight division is among the quote-unquote easier jumps to make in the sport, but it's not to say that certain guys don't have problems. But the reality is that David is a hard puncher. He's got a tremendous chin. He's got great stamina. Size-wise, they're going to be this. You know, they're similar size. When you saw them standing with each other at the press conference that they did back when they announced this fight, they were about the same. And you can't. The one that sticks out like a sore thumb, the stat, is that David is 10 years younger, and David's really just coming into his own, coming into his prime. So, you know, Vodzik's going to have to come up, I think, with some magic to get the job done.
Yeah, and okay, actually, I'm going to change my mind. Okay, so you just brought him up, so I would love to know, because David Benavidez talked to me about this last time, that his plan is, after he has this fight, to either to face the person between the Bivol and the Beterbiev fight, but that was obviously postponed, but we're going to hopefully be seeing that soon. I think there was a new date, October, right?
October 12th. October 12th is the new date. I mean, that's a fight that he would like. I mean, I spoke to him for an interview in the lead up to this fight, one-on-one. And we talked about that. I mean, for sure, he still would like to have the Canelo fight. He still said he would go back down to 168 to get the opportunity. He feels like he's being avoided by Canelo for a long time. It's hard to argue the point. But if he can't get that fight, he absolutely is interested in the Bivol Beterbiev winner. Obviously, the winner of that fight in October is going to be undisputed champion. If David wins on Saturday, he'll be the WBC's interim champion. Won't make him the immediate mandatory, but that would be a tremendous matchup and a very attractive fight. And on top of that, he gave credit to both guys. He said, "Look, Beterbiev's he's a beast. He's a tremendous fighter." He says, "I know Bivol really well. I sparred him many times, so he knows his game and he thinks very highly of him." So, let's see the October 12th fight happen. And if David's still standing after Saturday, obviously that's a huge, huge fight.
Yeah. Well, who do you see winning that fight between Beterbiev and Bivol in October?
You're asking me to make that pick now? I don't even know if the fight's going to necessarily happen in October because Beterbiev is rehabbing from a knee injury. So I don't put that pressure on me. The fight's months away. Let's wait, and we'll get there. Come on.
Okay, we'll wait and get there. But this is the 100th fight at the MGM Grand. How exciting is that?
I think it's great. This is it's the 100th boxing event to take place inside the Grand Garden Arena. Obviously, if you count up all the bouts on the cards, way more than 100 fights. But all the greats of the past 30, since 1994, have fought here. 30 years of boxing at the MGM. I consider it my home away from home. I've covered a ton of fights of the 100. I didn't cover boxing until 2000, and even missing all the events here from 94 to 2000. This is going to be my 56th event here in this building that I've covered.
Dan.
So I've had the great privilege to see all the greats. I never saw Tyson here. That was a little before my time. But Manny Pacquiao and Floyd and Oscar and Canelo and just all the big fights, Morales and Barrera and Juan Manuel Marquez. I mean, you can go on down the line of just one great fighter after another. And when I think about boxing venues, and it's no knock on any of the other great venues and arenas that we've seen fights in, that I've had a chance to cover fights at. But to me, I think it is, this emerald green building sitting in the desert.
I love it. And you just named a bunch of fights. With your career and all these fights you've been to at MGM Grand, what would be the most iconic one in your eyes?
Well, it's probably a fight that I wasn't at because it was before my time, but I think it comes down probably to two fights. It's either the first fight between Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson when Evander scored the big upset and knocked Tyson out. And then even though it wasn't maybe the greatest fight, but it's I think probably the single most memorable moment, other than maybe in the second Holyfield-Tyson fight when he bit his ear, is the shocking scene of George Foreman knocking out Michael Moorer to become the oldest heavyweight champion in boxing history. Just a spectacular moment in boxing. And for me personally, of fights I've covered here, I think of the iconic moment of when Manny Pacquiao got knocked out face first by Juan Manuel Marquez in their fourth fight, a few feet in front of me.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is about to be a great fight on Saturday night. I know both Dan and I are super excited, and we have a lot more content coming for you guys. So stay tuned, subscribe, and follow Title Sports Network for more. Bye, everyone. Dan, thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Until next time.